If you've got Omnibus in your collection, I've got tips to help take care of them. Hello and welcome back to John's Comics with Kids and another video really discussing Omnibus. My collection has changed a lot over the last, I would say, 5 years. And slowly but steadily, I've been getting more and more collected editions for my comics. It's become a better way for me to read and enjoy these books and have a physical copy that I can take off the shelf and read again and again. The best way to do that has been, for me at least, omnibus collecting. These are the hardcover editions that tend to have plenty of stories, ideally 30 to 40 to even 60 issues in one collected edition. So I've got 5 tips for you today. If you have omnibus in your collection, ways in which you can better protect them. I'm going to start off with dust jackets because most of these hardcover editions have a dust jacket. And these are wonderful for displaying because they give you a beautiful view of the book. The spine is usually very attractive and they have colorful artwork. And it's a great way to have them be on a shelf and know exactly what they are. But the problem is, don't read them with the dust jacket on. The dust jacket will tear, it will crush, it will bend, it will break. And sadly, it will look less and less attractive sitting on your shelf. So, my number one tip is when you take the book off of your shelf, slide the dust jacket off and put the dust jacket back in that spot so that you can protect it. You don't need a beautiful looking dust jacket, but it is nice when they're all on the shelf, which, let's be honest, is where they're going to be most of the time. If the dust jacket isn't torn, crumpled, or damaged in some way, then you'll have the omnibus itself. And depending on how you read it and where you read it, ideally, you won't be damaging the dust jacket when you do that. So that's number one. Number two for me is spine stretching. I recently did a short on this. It's probably been about a year. And I went through some of the details of how to do that, but I'm going to reenact that now and give you a little bit more information. So what I have here is my Batwoman omnibus, and what we're going to be trying to do is find ways to protect the spine by stretching it out. And what you want to do is almost every time you read a collected edition from an omnibus, you're going to want to spend a little time stretching out the spine. That means laying both the front and back covers down flat and then parceling out pages and gently laying them flat as you go along. This will give a chance to let that spine here stretch out and flatten a little bit so that it does not pull on the pages in such a way that they start to become loose. And I'm not trying to crush the pages. I'm not trying to overly put weight on them, but I'm gently kind of giving them a chance to space out. It's a fun way to get a little sneak preview of what you're going to see in the omnibus. So, I'm grabbing a few pages at a time and then laying them out. This omnibus in particular, if you haven't read Batwoman, is gorgeous. Artwork by J.H. William is stunning. Some really beautiful pieces. So I'm just going through and giving it a chance to stretch out. I want to go all the way through the omnibus. So I'm going little by little, taking pages, flattening and pressing them down. I don't want to be too rough with these books, but at the same time, I want to give them enough stretch that spine is able to then have some strength and not have portions that it's going to start to crack and break, which will then lead to page loss, right? Pages might potentially slide out depending on how often you're engaging with these activities of reading these omnibus. This could be a problem for you. And so whenever I pull an omnibus down, I'm not perfect at it, but I try to spend a little time pressing and relieving a little stress on the spine by doing this stretching activity. This is just a good way to extend the life of these books. So again, a lot of the wear and tear that happens with an omnibus is to the dust jacket and the spine, and anything we can do to support it in those ways is going to extend the life and give you a chance to not have the book in any way fall apart on you. Okay, so that's number one and number two. Number three is the tilting. And this happens on a bookshelf that's maybe too loose, or it can happen if you're laying the book vertically next to you in the bed or something like that. If you're done reading at night, if you set the book down and then it tilts like this, where the stress is now really intensely on the spine, right? It's not sitting flat, where the pages would kind of bow a little bit and make a line. Instead, it's going to slant, and that's going to put a ton of pressure on the side of the book, and then that's going to start having page separation. So you want to avoid that. Sometimes you'll take books off of a shelf, and the books on the shelf will then tilt and fall over a little bit. I'm being a little bit more dramatic with it, but you get the idea. And when that happens, you get that tilting and that separating, and then that creasing that'll happen internally. And that's where page separation happens. So you want to try to keep them as upright as possible. Ideally, when I'm reading a single omnibus, I'm laying it horizontally. I'm laying it flat next to my bed, in the room where I'm reading, on the table where I'm leaving it. I'm not leaving it vertical. I'm going to leave it this way, right? And then there's no risk of it slowly settling or tilting to one side or another, and then creating that stress that occurs where it's crooked now, right? Don't worry, this is a newer omnibus. I'm not worried about it getting damaged, but it's good to try things out. So that's the tilting we want to avoid. Next, similarly on the shelf, there's people that do something called rotating that I've learned about recently. And the idea is this: if I'm leaving these on my shelf, let's say, and no shame, but let's say that I use my Omnis more for decoration, and they're a wonderful set piece behind me, but I rarely take one out and read it. Instead, it's just a great way to own the books, but not necessarily read the books. That's fine. But over time, what you're going to get is called settling. That's when these pages start to come down. So right now, you can hopefully see that the hardcover and the pages, there's a gap here, right in the inside. And what happens over time is the pressure from top to bottom might push those pages down to where they are actually aligning with the cover, which is really going to be hard on that spine. And so what some people do for rotating is they pull the dust jacket off, they flip the book over, they put the dust jacket back on. So it's technically upside down, but you wouldn't know it. And they put it back on the shelf. Rotating, if you've got a large omnibus collection and they're on the shelf most of the time vertically, rotating allows that stressing to be reverted. So it's sometimes going to be angling down and sometimes angling up, and which will hopefully help it find a more happy medium long term. So I've seen people talk about this. Admittedly, this is new to me. So this was a new concept that I haven't necessarily tried out before, because I honestly haven't owned that many omnibus for that long. I would say it's probably been about 6 years that I've been reading books this way. And I've been spending that time reading and hearing from great community collectors who have more omnibus and gaining kind of some of these tricks and ideas. So rotating might be something for you that you can do to minimize that sagging effect on the pages. But my last tip, number 5, is, in my opinion, a more reasonable way to do that. And it's called shims. And you may have heard of this in woodworking or, in some way using tables and chairs around the house. The idea that an uneven surface is going to wobble. So you stick something under one side of the chair or table to even out the chair legs. It's the same concept here. And what you do is you cut or fold backing boards to fit in this little groove here between the hardcovers. And if you get, and usually it's going to be like 3 pieces of backing board cut to fit, and then you tape them together and you slide them in here so that when the book is resting on the shelf, there's a little support that sits there to hold the pages up. It doesn't need to be cut perfectly. It doesn't need to be perfectly sized, but those little backing board shims, cut to fit in the space more or less, will add just a little bit of cushion so that those pages that are very heavy, I mean, if you've lifted an omnibus, you know how heavy they can be. Those pages will not just be sitting on air and then slowly sagging. Instead, they'll have something to balance their pressure and keep them aligned inside of the book. So using shims is another way to keep that stress off of the spine of the book and to keep those pages from becoming loose. So there you go. 5 tips to better protect omnibus. Let me know if I missed any good stuff. If there's something that you've learned, I really love gaining more knowledge in this area because, again, it's very new to me. So this is something that I've kind of been excited to expand my knowledge around. In this community of comics, there's so many great people sharing wisdom, and I appreciate it if you do the same for me. Thank you to the channel members. I've got some really great community members who support my channel. You can become a channel member as well. Just hit that join button. You can become a coalition member like Rob and Sarah here and help me choose books to review each month. You can become an X-Men channel member and have an entry to win the giveaway every single month at the end of the month. You could be a new mutant and have one, or actually at this point, I think it's 3 names get drawn from here each month and added to that giveaway box potentially. So get your chance to win the giveaway box at the end of the month and then support the channel, because I hugely appreciate you guys making it possible for me to keep the StreamYard lights on. Thanks everybody for hanging out. I appreciate you hopefully learning some things about Omnibus, and I'll see you all again soon.